This iPad is from 2020. It's not the newest, it doesn't have any fancy features, it's not M2 or M4 powered. It's just what I need though. I've used it to make thousands of illustrations and thousands of dollars with those illustrations. And today I'm going to tell you exactly why this 5-year-old iPad is still great today in 2025. That's 5 years of regular use, so if you're wondering if you need to get the latest iPad in 2025 to get started with digital art, or whether your current device is still enough, this video is for you. If I were starting fresh in 2025, needing to get a different device, the one that I would get, don't worry, we'll get to that. So first we're going to talk about my iPad setup and my experience with it. This iPad has been my creative companion for 5 years. It's taken me through learning, experimenting, teaching, and establishing a creative business. And I've never once felt limited by its age. So let me tell you exactly what I have. I have a 2020 iPad Pro 11-inch second generation, a second generation Apple Pencil. Right now my iPad is updated with the iPad OS version 18.5, and my storage capacity is 128 gigabytes. So I use this case. It's called a Sewenged case. Sewenged case. Sewenged case. There we go. That's it. And I use a paper-like screen protector. And I haven't changed my current one in over a year, and you can really tell. I should probably change it soon. So over these past 5 years, let me tell you things that I have had to replace. I have had to replace my screen protector. I started off getting those Pro Case tempered glass protectors, and I've switched it to the paper-like because it's just so much better for recording and for illustrating. It feels, it's called paper-like because it feels and sounds like you are illustrating on paper, and it was a great investment. And I've also had to replace my Swinged case, but I also need to replace this one soon because it's getting kind of dingy. And the only other thing that I have ever replaced is my Apple Pencil tip. I chose to get the A-Winner replacement tips, and they are compatible with the Apple Pencil 2. I got these tips on Amazon for less than $5, and I haven't noticed any difference between these and the Apple manufactured tip that it came with. And the only thing I've noticed is it will come loose a little bit because maybe I'm drawing too vigorously, I don't know. But that's honestly the only difference. There's no difference in pressure sensitivity. Don't waste your money on a new pencil or Apple manufactured tips. Get the cheapies. They work just as good. And that's it. That's all I've ever had to replace or fix or get updated. So now let's talk about what I use my iPad for. It might be helpful to give some context on what I actually use my iPad for. So first up, I use my iPad every week to film Procreate tutorials for YouTube. I use it to create custom Procreate brushes to sell, so I just do that directly in Procreate again. I use it to make thousands of black line art illustrations that I make into Procreate stamp brushes, as well as SVG illustration design sets, and I sell those on Etsy, Creative Fabrica, Creative Market, So Fontsy, and on Cricut. So those are all the platforms that I sell on, and how this iPad helps me create a pretty good income. I also use it to make animations and Procreate Dreams from time to time, and then I just sketch, doodle, make illustrations, play with art, and do all that stuff in Procreate. I even use it to create full illustrations based on my drawing prompts and then post them on Instagram as often as I can. And then I just have a few personal things that I use it for. And through all of that, for these past 5 years, this iPad has never held me back. It's kind of helped me grow in so many ways. There's never a day I'm not using this iPad. I use it many times throughout the day, and then all the way up until I go to bed at night, and then I finally put it down. So through continued use like that, how has it held up for the past 5 years? Honestly, it's still going pretty strong. Procreate runs as smoothly as ever. The only lag I've ever noticed, and this has been on very rare occasions, so I can't even really replicate it to show you. Sometimes I have a lag in the opacity slider. So when I'm adjusting the opacity, sometimes the little slider will lag a little bit, but again, that's rare. It's pretty short-lived and it goes back to normal pretty quickly. The Apple Pencil still works and it pairs immediately, and it still works with all of my brushes. Pressure sensitivity and tilt has not changed at all since I first got it. The Apple Pencil battery lasts a very long time, but as far as the iPad battery, it probably doesn't last as long as it used to, but I don't personally notice it a whole lot because I do get hours of use out of it, but I also have a really great charging station. So when I've used it for a while, I go ahead and plug it in, and then it's recharge really quickly when I need to use it again. And I don't leave it on the charger all night. I just charge it until it's done. And I feel like that has helped the battery last a long time as well. And I've never actually ran out of battery while using it. And as far as storage goes, I mentioned I only have 128 gigabytes of storage. That might not seem like enough to some people, but I'm using a little over half of that, and I've never really had to offload a whole lot. I didn't even do any cleanups before this demonstration. This is an honest usage for 5 years, and I'm only a little over half of my storage capacity. I do work pretty smart in how I use my canvases in Procreate. Instead of doing one canvas per illustration, I will stack a bunch of illustrations as layers in one canvas if it's one project. And of course I have the iCloud, and so it offloads a lot of my pictures and they're shared between my phone and my computer. But the one thing I will say is I have been meaning to archive my brushes, but that brings me to the Procreate update 5.4, and I know we're all looking forward to that. I'm actually really excited about this Procreate update because a huge change is coming to the brush library, so it means I can kind of be lazy about my hundreds of brushes in my brush library, because I'm assuming this new update might help me clean this up once that happens. One of the best parts about the new brush library is that we can finally hide, group, and organize brushes more easily, which is going to help a lot with this clutter that I have. And it will indirectly help me with storage too, with Brush Sync with the iCloud. The less I'm overwhelmed with my brush list, the better, and I might actually end up archiving some of my brushes. Even though I'm working with 128 gigabytes of storage, little things like that make a big difference on how manageable it all feels. So next, let's talk about the biggest question aspiring artists have when it comes to an iPad. What features are actually important to digital art? So first of all, it should be able to support Procreate. Number one, you just want to make sure that's a new enough operating system that can support Procreate, or whatever programs that you want to use to make your art, of course. You know, make your own choice here. Apple Pencil compatibility, because not all iPads are compatible with an Apple Pencil, and it's usually the older ones that aren't. And an Apple Pencil that supports pressure sensitivity, so not the USB-C or an off-brand stylus. At least 128 gigabytes, preferably 256 gigabytes, but you're not going to convince me that you need all of that because I don't even use all 128. A screen size that feels good for your workflow. And it is true that the size of iPad that you purchase can limit the number of layers that you can use in a Procreate canvas. For me, the more layers, the better my art looks, but I have never found that this size, the 11-inch iPad Pro, has held me back at all. So depending on which size iPad you're interested in, you just want to make sure that it supports the number of layers that you typically like to use. So if making a large investment in the latest iPad to support all of these needs is too much or just not possible,
in terms of money, we have no money.
Consider refurbished or older models like mine. Just make sure that it's compatible with an Apple Pencil and all of those other things I said. And that information will be in the specs on the iPad that you are shopping for. Word of warning, do not spend all of your money on the iPad alone. You need to set aside a little bit to pay for the accessories that you need. So the Apple Pencil, because it doesn't come with the iPad, and then make sure that you also have enough for a case and the paper-like screen protectors. I highly recommend those. My iPad, my Apple Pencil, my paper-like protectors, those are all linked in my Amazon storefront, and that is always linked in my description box. So if you ever want to shop my computer desk or my art desk, all of my exact tools are linked in my Amazon storefront. But this next take might be surprising. I know after everything I just said, but if I were starting fresh in 2025, needing to get a different device, the one that I would get is a new one. But hear me out. I have an established creative business, and my creative business requires that at this point. And I'm the sort that will keep on using it until the device can't sustain what I need it for anymore. I'm not the type of person that buys new technology every year just because it has features that my old device doesn't have.
Doing the reveal, his name's Jack.
This is just not me. I use my iPad only for the illustration process. I don't use it for video editing. I have my computer for that. So you just want to make sure that you get the device that fits all of your needs and is affordable. But when I do decide to upgrade, I'm sure 5+ years after upgrading, I'll be making another video saying it still works. But for now, what I have from 2020 still does everything I need, and I'm gonna stick with this one for now. And I'm happy with what I have. So let me tell you the biggest thing that I've learned using the same iPad for 5 years. You don't need new gear to level up your art. What you really need is time to explore, drawing without pressure, and falling in love with the creative process. If you want to scale a creative business, maybe you do need to make a bigger investment down the road, but this is all I've needed to get started and sustain it for quite a few years. But starting with the basics to understand what you truly need for your business or for your hobby, it's much better to start small. And that might look like getting an older version or a refurbished model of an iPad just to get you started, rather than getting something brand new with the largest capacity and the fastest processor. You don't need the best gear to start. You just need to start. Consistency is more important than specs. Being an artist doesn't start with better gear. It starts with making art. The iPad is just a tool. Your creative growth is the thing that actually matters. So if you're curious what you can do with the iPad that you already have, check out some of my favorite Procreate tutorials. They're beginner friendly and fun, and they don't require anything fancy. I love sharing tutorials where all I do is show you how to use the best built-in tools that are already in your Procreate, like this video where I show you how to make geometric art using only the selector tool. So click on that video and I will meet you there.